Welcome back to Political Misfits on Radio Sputnik, where we bring you news, politics, and culture without the red and blue treatment. I'm Michelle Whitty. I'm here with John Kiriakou. We got a bunch of domestic political and economic stories to talk about, but I did have to point out, I saw this on Twitter. Reuters is running live a protest against the ICRC in Tel Aviv.
Interesting.
The International Committee of the Red Cross. That seems strange to me.
Very.
Can't really figure it out. Trying to figure it out. There's nothing, nobody is covering it except for Reuters. And I can only guess that this is about the ICRC 2 days ago issuing a press statement saying that it is deeply troubled that one of its convoys in Gaza City came under fire on Tuesday. And so maybe that is why you have all these people out in Tel Aviv with signs that say, ICRC, just do your job.
Strange.
It is sort of wild to me saying, and they didn't even say it was Israeli fired. I mean, again,
Right.
we talked about this at the time.
Yeah, we did.
We generally speaking, we can see which side has been firing on ambulances in this war, but it was not as though the ICRC issued some blistering statement about Israel's tactics.
They didn't.
Or mentioned the country by
measured.
name from what I can see. But, how dare they just do their jobs? Well, we have other issues to talk about. We have inflation, although not as much. Inflation's going down. Prices, a little stuck. We've got bank losses. We've got government shutdown debates. We've got strike deals, something to be happy about. We got a little more about the GOP debate. And we're joined for all of this by Steve Grumbine. He's founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. He hosts the Macro and Cheese podcast. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I mentioned this great New York Times opinion piece headline yesterday or the day before. He's too old and I feel poor, which I feel like we can repeat forever until the 2024 election, and it will still need no explanation. The headline was about a piece of a bunch of the New York Times opinion columnists all talking to each other. So it was as insufferable as you would imagine. And it doesn't go into why voters, quote, feel poor. Although Nate Silver does tell us there's a whole cottage industry devoted to trying to figure out why Biden doesn't get more credit on the economy. And another writer was shocked to find that only 2% of voters in a recent poll think that the economy is excellent. Only 1% of voters under 30 think the economy is excellent. And maybe it's because we're all paying way more for stuff than we're used to. And if inflation measures have come down, which they have, as a story from Vox this week points out, we are still in a constant state of sticker shock. And so that is where I want to start, right? I mean, we have tracked inflation on this show, right? We watched it shoot up in 2022. Prices shot up in 2022. Over the course of this year, inflation has slowed a great deal, but a lot of prices remain stuck. And so I wanted to help you to help us understand that if inflation is slowing down, right, but prices are staying put, what is the problem we have then, and what is there to do about it?
Well, you can say sticker shock, which I think is natural when you see prices go up. I mean, anecdotally, I love those Reese's peanut butter cup, the big ones, not the little teeny thin ones, but the big thick ones. And when I went into the store to buy a pack of them, they were like $3 for a single 2-pack. Wow. My eyes exploded. I was like, what in the world? $3 for two little, anyway. But what it really comes down to is disposable income. The prices going up are almost, you'll have some sticker shock. You get used to it. But when your wages don't go up in line with the price hikes and the interest rates that go up, they continue to rob you of your spending power, regardless of what it looks like. Because what is GDP? What are the things they're measuring? It's the amount of money spent. It's the total amount spent in a given year. And so they're looking at that and they're saying, it's a lot. Well, guess what? You just raised prices through the roof. And people still need these things, whether or not they're rationing on other ways or not. So the prices have gone up beyond people's rationing, and their paychecks have not kept up. So I think it's really, really bad form that they don't ask the other side of that equation. There's a reason why prices bother people. Think about when you're doing well, when you receive your tax return or a bonus at work. And I know these are things that people of privilege get, right? Because most of us don't have the luck of those sorts of things. But with that in mind, maybe you're not as worried about whether it cost you $50 to go out to dinner that night. But under normal circumstances, when you go to McDonald's and to buy two big, Happy Meals or whatever, and you're paying $20 and you're looking at each other like, my God, what did we just do? Mm-hmm. That is a very, very real thing. That's where the rubber meets the road in your regular, normal, day-to-day life. When you're used to paying $300 a month for electric, that sounds horrible to me just saying it out loud. But when you're used to it, you're used to it. It's like, okay, I made my budget around this. But when it goes up to $400 a month, that's just $100 difference, right? It's not $1 million. But if you budgeted $300 and you spent that money elsewhere, and now all of a sudden you've got to find another $100, that panic that hits you when you don't have it, that's a very real thing. And I think that's what most people are feeling right now is that price has gone up, but their wages have not.
Mm-hmm. And also, again, like we were told that interest rate hikes would tame inflation. Mm-hmm. And our experience of inflation is price hikes. And so we sort of have, we are suffering through the solution of interest rate increases, but not really across the board experiencing the consequence, right? Which we were told were lower prices. We have corporations just deciding, we discovered that people were willing to pay this, so we're just going to keep it here.
That's right. Let me take it a step further. So we've talked about this before, that the interest rates hikes are actually a payment to somebody. Those payments to somebody are usually people that already have money. Mm-hmm. So the people that already have money have won big during these interest rate hikes. Mm-hmm. These are net transfers of wealth to the wealthy. So for them, feeling joy over having more money coming in, and to be fair, pension plans and other folks that have long-term investments, especially in the older community, have probably done remarkably well as well, because obviously when you look at your 401k and the group plan that you had was paying out at, let's say, 2%, but now all of a sudden it's paying out at 8%, that feels really good. So for some, this has worked out well, but for the average person, it has not. And I think the further down you go, the younger you get, the less hope you have and the more pain you feel. And for those families that have a budget based on fixed income or they're scrambling, they're trying to figure out what to do. And when the legal options aren't there, the illegal options become the only way forward. And you see that stuff starting to come up now, too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other thing, too, about feeling poor is that, I feel like probably a lot of millennials and Gen Z, not regardless of how much money you make, but I will say you can feel poor and be making a decent salary because you're never going to buy a house, right? Not to be, totally fatalistic about it, but like the amount of money you would need to put down and pay a mortgage in my parents' generation, right? Or even just a generation sort of right ahead of me was so much less than you need now that of course you can make a decent salary and have enough to go out and still feel sort of permanently precarious because you are cut off from every way of accumulating wealth that was traditionally, what was afforded to regular people. And so I do think like there are all these different ways that people, try to figure out, the economy's doing great. Why does everybody feel so bad? Well, it's because like all of these measures of stability are receding further and further away because now you got to be a millionaire by the time you're 30 if you want to be able to put a down payment on anything.
Yeah, we talked about the parking lots with people making $70,000 a year living in parking lots previously.
Yeah.
This is more a continuation of something I think is very important. When we define wealth, we oftentimes just think about money. I remember when I was young, the idea of making $100,000 a year felt like a lot of money.
Oh yeah,
right. And $100,000 is now kind of like just entry level almost. I mean, I don't want to sound privileged here but I know that $100,000 doesn't feel the same as it did when I was growing up.
Mhm.
100,000 it was always like a benchmark number. And now it just doesn't do for you what it once did. And this is because it's not about the number. The number is irrelevant. We could all make $10,000 a year, and if houses only cost $20,000, we'd be rich.
Mhm.
Wealth is about the ability to make things happen, the ease of which you make things happen. It's not really about the number. And so it's all relative. So this is why I don't really worry about quote unquote inflation. I don't really worry about higher prices. What I worry about is the other side of that coin keeping up with it. Again, if you and I made $10 an hour yesterday, and now today we're making $15 an hour, but the cost of our basic living went up to where we would have needed to have been $20 an hour for it to matter, we're going to feel incredibly poor, even though we just got a 50% raise.
Mhm.
So it really is functional. You've got two sides of that ledger. You've really got to pay attention to income and outflow. It's not just the one side of the coin. And I think that's where a lot of right-wing people in particular get messed up, because they often say, well, look how much a loaf of bread cost in 1919.
Yeah.
And now a loaf of bread costs $4. See, what in the world's happening? Well, dude, the guy made 25 cents an hour in 1919.
Right.
Are you suggesting we go back to 25 cents an hour?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you saying, Mr. Man?
I've got a
What are
shiny
you saying?
nickel for
Think
you.
about it.
Okay. We're not going to worry about inflation and these other things. Tell me if we should worry about unrealized bank losses. So Moody's estimated last month that some of the U.S.'s biggest banks, like JP Morgan, Bank of America in particular, a couple of others, are sitting on unrealized losses of about $650 billion because of this ongoing bond market meltdown. And Market Insider, in a story on this, notes that these losses were before there was another acute crash in October. They are unrealized losses because banks have not offloaded these investments. They're holding on to them. And, what they are saying is these are government backed. They're going to recover. There is no problem here. I don't know if there is a problem or not. It was partially bond prices plummeting that caused the failure of Silicon Valley Bank in March. Bank of America right now, which might have something like $130 billion in paper losses, is saying these are government-backed securities. There's nothing to worry about. But they are also seeing these paper losses drag down bank shares, which I gather matters from the fact that it was mentioned in this story. So explain to us what is going on here, right? How scary is what is happening in the bond market? Should we be confident that we won't see any more high-profile bank implosions? And honestly, are all these banks just sitting on these depreciated bonds because trying to sell them off would totally destabilize the economy?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. So you notice how you never hear any complaints from the Bitcoin community when they say hodl, right? Hodl, right?
Yes.
They understand to hold, right? But in fiat world we can't hold, right? But anyway, in this particular case, let's go back to Silicon Valley for a minute and just think about what happened there. Silicon Valley bought a lot of fixed rate bonds. They had long-term fixed rate bonds, thinking, hey, we're going to beat the system. There's no such thing as inflation. We're not going to have interest rate hikes. We're good. But then once interest rate hikes started going up, those bonds were really not worth what they were to buy a new bond now, right? So nobody wanted to buy them. So they couldn't liquidate fast enough to cover expenditures that were going out the door, people pulling their deposits, you name it. So this is a kind of a fallout from a rather strange phenomenon that the Fed has done by raising interest rates. So I imagine a lot of banks tried to shift their positions to flexible exchange rates and mix their portfolio up enough so that they didn't have one blind weak spot, like Silicon Valley did, which was absolutely malpractice. Can I say that it's not going to happen? No, I can't say that it's not going to happen, because banks do what they do. Like for example, the United States government, take them for a minute. We never have to default a day in our lives. In fact, a recent note from Nathan Tankus from Notes from the Crisis, if y'all don't follow his Substack, follow his Substack. he talks extensively about all the shenanigans going on behind the scenes that the Fed knows that it can do to ensure that there's no such thing as a default, even not including considering minting the coin. So a lot of these things are some old stuffy white dude making some decisions that impact everybody else. And then those decisions cascade down. It's political largely. It's not like, oh my God, this is imminent. So I think that part of this is just sort of watching what's happening. And one of the other challenging things here is too, the narratives that are out there, not only on social media, but in the mainstream news and the right-wing news in particular, has never seen a crisis that they can't like fan the flames of and try to make seem like it's this big deal. I don't know whether it's for likes and clicks or whether it's just because they're reactionaries by nature. But there's an element here of willful, I don't understand what's going on because I'm really secretly trying to get you to buy my Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with the other stuff. So I'm not suggesting there isn't bad stuff going on, but I am suggesting that these banks are holding these things because the sum would be stupid.
Is this, is it a little bit of MMT for me, but not for thee? Like we know the government can make us whole if they choose to?
Everything is that. Yeah. You're going to find that every answer to every question on the test is E, all the above. Yes, MMT for me. You screw off. You're done.
We've got to add it all up and, oh gosh, turns out again, we can't afford your cancer treatment. Yeah.
That's exactly correct.
You know,
it is wash, rinse, repeat. It is almost insane how much wash, rinse, repeat it is.
Let me ask you, as we are happening, I've started to write a question about the government shutdown and what spending bills have been like crafted and which ones were sitting around. And then I just thought, I can't get my head around it. I don't care. But I did want to ask, one of the things that has happened through these sort of multiple budget standoffs and crises over the past year is that there has been a lot more scrutiny on military spending and military aid from the United States, particularly to Ukraine, but also to Israel. And of course, the way we have government spending conversations still in mainstream media and on Capitol Hill is as though, the government, it has just got an extra big regular family checkbook and there's dollars that go out and there's dollars that come in and, whatever, like it's a sort of zero sum thing. That, of course, is a state of being that modern monetary theory blows up. And so I know that it is very frustrating to watch these conversations unfold where, politicians are constantly saying, well, we have money for this, but we don't have money for that. But I do think maybe there's an opportunity here, given how astronomical some of these sums that have gone to Ukraine in particular have been, for people to look at that and say, one, where is that really coming from if you're not just making it up? And two, you can't continue to tell me we have $100 billion that we can send to Ukraine at a moment's notice, and we don't have that, we can't employ that mechanism for something like a single payer healthcare system. Like it seems as though even if, it seems as though it provides an opportunity.
It's like the whole big kick the door in. Okay. This is the easy part. The hard part is that most people have been trained from day one as children to believe in that household mythology. Every single right-wing Republican has grown up believing that the Bank of America is broke. And I don't mean Bank of America. I mean, the United States is broke.
Yeah.
And that we're wasting money. They've been raised from before they had their diapers off, okay? So taking that down, something that deeply ingrained in every aspect of their life ruled by this false belief, okay, is hard. But let me just say, Biden and Yellen said the quiet part out loud. They said, of course we can afford 2 wars. Yeah. Of course we can. Yeah. What are you talking about? We can afford 3. We can afford this, no problem at all, okay? Now, unfortunately, only people like yourself have actually said that out loud. There's such a narrow window of people that even paid 5 seconds of attention to that. And then to repeat it to them, it goes in one ear and right out the other because their brain tells them that can't be true. And then they're so overwhelmed with propaganda and looking at dead babies in Gaza and everything else that they literally can't process another thought beyond that. And so this thing just goes right by them as if it didn't even happen. But it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to keep beating that drum to remind them that it happened, because the truth is that almost every single ill that is happening out there is because of the fake, keyword fake, invisible hand, okay, of the market, the fake free market that is 100% state-driven by state currency and the rules of which state currency employs. Every single bit of currency out there in the world is an act of law. Even banks lending out billions, that is allowable by law. If the law changed, it would change. But because we don't understand that it isn't some natural phenomenon, that it just happens and it's all totally like there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing they could do to bring prices down. There's nothing they could do to change the interest rate. There's nothing they could do to spend more money to provide health care. People fundamentally don't get that it is a creature of law. So it's a decidedly political battle. But as we've talked about many times there as well, we are in an oligarchy. We are not in a democracy. So the very act of placebo voting, as I call it, makes people feel like they've got skin in the game, like they've done something. But in reality, I assure you, I have not met a single person that voted for us to go to Ukraine and has voted for us to go and fund this bludgeoning and murder in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
I've not met anybody that has said that. So when you think about the vote, you think about all this stuff, you've got to realize we truly live in a plutocracy, in an oligarchy. And the idea of democracy is just there to keep us from absolutely burning the place down. That's the only reason it's there. It has no real tangible agency for the voter. And I think guys like Larry Lessig, who try to talk about money in politics, and so this is a very real thing. I'm not as worried about money in politics so much as I am that it is a charade, that it's not real, that it's not something we can impact short of becoming ungovernable, short of direct action, short of being like the civil rights movement. We are at a point in time right now where people are terrified of the reality. So they pretend like it's not happening, shove their head in a hole and ignore it. But in reality, nothing, absolutely nothing will change until we understand and take direct action. And that doesn't mean the voting booth. It just doesn't. I wish it did. It doesn't.
I have two more questions for you. I'm going to save the good one for last. I wonder, just sort of generally, what role you think the economy played in Tuesday's elections. I think obviously abortion was huge. I think social issues were huge. But it is interesting to me that for some time now, Americans have been mad at Joe Biden about the economy and feeling poor, but they haven't really done the thing where you switch over to Republicans, because it's Republicans who are usually in the sort of like economy lane. We're the business friendly dudes. We're the guys you go to when you want to make more money. And I wonder, do you think that the people who are most affected by these economic doldrums are not voting? Are they more scared of abortion being banned than they are of being broke? Or I think maybe this is the case. Are Republicans just failing at communication or really demonstrating that they don't have a solution to our economic woes and they can't even pretend to make one up? I mean, all we heard of the debate was like cutting regulation. Like that's not going to do anything for anybody's wages,
No. Listen, this is all ideological and it's all brainwashing. It's all out there trying to get people to, manufacture consent within the Republican ranks, trying to find a message that resonates. And right now, the only message that resonates with them is Biden bad. And it's a message that resonates with lefties too.
Yeah,
Biden bad.
Sure, he's bad.
That's about the only thing. And if you look around, I think the guy's name is Bashir down south. This guy won without mentioning Biden at all. He didn't focus on Biden because he knew that if he put Biden up there, that people, it's such an easy target because Biden is so universally disliked. And so he's not the hot ticket. But as far as Republicans go, I think people fundamentally realize that, you know, I think a lot of people are waking up that their vote is not doing for them what they thought it would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea of switching parties feels like, you know, bailing out one side of the Titanic for the other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people really see much by way of either party. I don't think they see much in the way of that electoral process. So the idea of jumping back and forth when nobody is actually articulating a real coherent path forward, I just don't think people see any way out. And I think that they are fatigued by the news cycle. I think the news cycle and everything else has kept them away because nobody sounds good. Nobody's even lying to you nicely. Yeah. There's not even a good fake story to tell. It's all dead babies. And, you know, my goodness, there was a picture on Twitter where there were children. You could see the building had been, they in their sleep, they had been blown up, and there they are dead with the building on.
Yeah,
that has got to distract, if you will,
yes,
and rightfully so. Yeah. Distract of whether or not maybe I'll go for the right winger over there in the Republicans this time. There's just not that thing because you see universally Republicans just censored Rashida Tlaib for defending life, for making, hey, by the way, Palestinians are people too. Yeah. And they censored her for this stuff. So what is there to like in them? What is there to like in the Democrats either? Yeah. I mean, people are getting fatigued and they're saying none of this theater is working for me anymore. There's a crack in the matrix. They're not making it believable anymore. It's starting to peel away and you're starting to say, I just don't see the relevance in what you're saying. My life sucks. I'm watching it from the economy to, my healthcare. I mean, my goodness, signing up for healthcare benefits each time they raise your deductible, they lower your coverage. Every time it's something else being taken away, more taken away. And then you've got to figure out how am I going to cover for that too? Mm-hmm. And so how in the world could they see either party as a solution when neither of them is producing any kind of coherent path forward? No one is articulating a way forward that makes people whole. Not one of them.
Yeah.
So I just don't think anybody sees it as relevant.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. We're sort of stuck in the system that has been created is not one that has sort of partisan origins, right? There's not sort of a fight between Democrats and Republicans against a sort of neo-colonial and neoliberal system. And so nobody really has anything else to offer. Nobody's going to get excited when they want their wages to go up about Ron DeSantis saying he's going to slash regulation. All right, you know what, Steve? Let me ask you one good positive question before we let you go. At least for me, I think this is good news, and that is the end of the SAG-AFTRA strike. The Actors Union has a deal to bring its members after the longest strike in the history of the union, and it does appear to be a good deal. It includes better compensation for streaming shows and films, better healthcare funding, concessions from studios on self-taped auditions. Don't really know what that means, but sure, whatever. And what I think is really interesting here, guarantees that studios will not use AI to create digital replicas of actors' likenesses without their approval and without paying them. And that apparently is one that the union was holding out for. And it really is ghoulish to imagine that these studios wanted to be able to take unused footage. I read a story actually that said they wanted to do an AI scan of actors so that they could then, even after you're dead, make you jump around and do things without your approval and without paying you. It's disgusting. And so as I was writing this question for you and kind of thinking about what it meant, I still think, it is good to see a labor victory. And I am really glad they held out for that, not just for actors, but just to see what these huge businesses want to do. right? And how they want to use AI to get around ever having to compensate a human being for payment. And I feel like it is really good news that they stopped that in its tracks. And that they were willing to go 118 days to get it. And so I wanted to ask what you take from this, from this strike and from what looks like a victory.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings about this. What you just said, I feel great about. That's wonderful that people will own their own likeness to the extent that they have to approve, and they'll get paid for it. That's good. Mm. But there's a fundamental flaw in unions of today right now. And there are people that I know are agitating within the unions to develop a class awareness, a class union struggle. These kind of class struggle unions don't exist right now, but they exist in books and they exist in history too. We have a historical view of this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing, unfortunately, right now is still a lot of corporate unions fighting over urine breaks, bathroom breaks, and things of, minimal impact to society. They're very, like, if you remember, I think we've talked about this before, but if you go back to Las Vegas and on the Nevada primaries a few years ago, the culinary workers were very much not willing to fight for Medicare for all because they felt like they had won their Cadillac plan. Mm-hmm. So there is a yin and a yang to this union stuff because it's very myopically focused on their win. And that's very libertarian. That's very much me, myself, and I. That's not collective wins. That's not class consciousness. That's not, in my opinion, it's not, it's like the diet right of evil. It's like 1% evil. It's still not, it's not what I'm looking for. I appreciate it. It's good, but unfortunately, I believe that what it does is kind of like the FDR version of saving capitalism here, right? Mm-hmm. These are little mini wins that give us a thought that, hey, we can still play on this battlefield with these capitalists, when in reality, we're getting crushed. Mm-hmm. And so until we develop a class struggle form of unionism, some of these wins, we got to have some wins, right? Because we have no wins. Mm-hmm. So I understand the inclination to glom onto anything that feels like a win because anything is better than nothing. Mm-hmm. But I just want to be clear, though, that to me, the real issue here is that these union struggles are still very much myopic and they're kept in their corner until we start seeing groups, unions string together and say, screw the laws. Mm-hmm. I know the law says we can't do X or Y, but you know what? We're not backing down. We're going to lock arms and we are going to make this happen. Now, the day that happens, and God only knows if it ever will, but the day that happens is the day we have a real legitimate chance to change all the stuff we've talked about in this call. Mm-hmm. And I think that right there is my only caution as to getting too excited about individual union wins.
No, I'll take it.
To the extent that it's a win, it's a win.
Yeah. No, it's true. I was talking yesterday. I know we have to let you go, Steve, but I was saying, like, when are we going to see? Maybe it's unfair to put it all on their shoulders, but every time we do a new story about, a 30% increase, tenfold increase in congenital syphilis cases, or infant mortality increasing, and maternal mortality increasing, and everybody, all these healthcare workers going like, yep, system's really broken. Done broke a long time ago, and we're seeing the fallout. I keep thinking, where's the organization in that industry? Who are the people who could really, speak out effectively mm-hmm. and potentially mobilize effectively to say we don't need more tinkering or more subsidies to insurance companies. We need an entire overhaul. So yeah, I am glad for this deal, and I am glad for this sort of stop of AI encroachment, but I don't disagree with you, Steve. It is, as long as we are sort of fighting in a really narrow sense to be exploited less, we're not fighting together to change the conditions that we live in. Amen. Well said. Steve, where should our listeners go to find more of your work? I saw that you were having a conversation about green colonialism on Macro and Chill the other day. That sounded really interesting.
Absolutely. So find us. We have Macro and Cheese, which is our podcast that comes out every Saturday morning. You can find it on any podcast platform, Spotify, iTunes, whatever. Of course, you can come to our website, realprogressives.org. And then on Tuesday nights, we have a thing called Macro and Chill, which is a Zoom call where we sit down and we go through the podcast together, because active listening, it's a real thing. And we talk about it, and
Yeah.
it's a really good way of
Yeah.
really hearing what was said in the podcast. Rogue Scholar has been on hiatus. It's going to come back soon. I'm not sure in what form, but it will be coming back soon. So, and then, of course, you can catch me here when I come on Political Misfits and when I'm over on Status Quo.
Fantastic. You stay busy, Steve. Take
Thank
care.
you. You too. Take it easy, y'all.